Okay, so now let's get started on our first circuit. So it's going to be this circuit right here. We're going to need conductive thread, conductive fabric, LED, battery holder, and a battery, and a needle. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is glue down the battery holder, down with the positive side going to the right. Just a small little bit of glue. Again, you don't need to glue it down. You can just stitch it right into the paper, which I'm going to do next, but this just helps to make it sturdier and make sure it stays in place. Okay, so like I said, this is the positive side of the battery holder with a positive prong that's going to go up this way. So what I'm going to do is, just to help remind myself, is put a little positive right there, positive side of the circuit. This is the negative side of the circuit. So I want my positive leg of my LED here, positive leg of LED here, and then negative and negative. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to quickly cut just some smaller pieces of conductive fabric so that I can stitch them down to the paper. It with the conductive thread. So I'm going to cut off a piece of thread from the wrap here. The first thing we want to do is sew through the metal prong on the battery holder. So if you zoom in on this guy, you'll see the little prongs have a hole in them. So with the needle, I can just sew right through that and onto the paper. And if you don't glue your battery holder down first, this is how you would get it to stick to the paper. You would just sew it right in. So we're just going to go down like that, pull through. And then I can go right back up. And now I'm going to tie a knot. So now our thread is connected to the battery holder, I should say. Okay, and now I'm just going to follow this line up till I get to the LED. You don't need to follow each stitch specifically on paper if you don't want to, but you can. I'm going to go a little bit faster through this. Just go here. So I'm going to stitch through that a couple of times and just stitch right into it. And back out. One more time. Right here. Okay, now I'm going to set that down. So right now I have thread going from the positive side of the holder, stitched in and out of the paper, stitched to one piece of conductive fabric, in and out of the paper again, and here it is. So the next part is connected to the LED. So I'm going to start with my yellow LED, and remember the longer leg is positive, so I'm going to make sure that it goes right like this. So a helpful thing for connecting the conductive fabric to the LED is to loop the leg of the LED so you have something to tie onto. So this is where the tweezers come in handy. If you want, you can just bend it with your finger, and that works fine. This side I will do with the tweezer so you can see. And so now you can see that I have like a nice tight little loop there, and I can tie into that with the conductive thread. Now with the other hand, with the other side, I'll do it with my fingers just so you can see that that works. It's just not quite as clean. But there we go. There's my loop on my negative side. So now that they're both twisted, it's hard to remember which is which, but since I colored my positive side, there's black on that leg, so I know that's my positive side. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is thread the needle through the hole of the LED. So I'll get that zoomed in here for you. So here's my needle. It's gonna go right through the hole here. And I'm gonna do this a couple of times. I really want this connection with the LED to be nice and strong. Okay, now I'm going to stitch back into the paper and wrap it a few times again just to help it stay. Now I'm going to tie the knot on the other side of the paper. So I'm going to go right here, loop through, and then loop through, and there is my knot. So now I know that it's nice and tight, and I'm going to cut that thread off. And there is the positive side of the circuit. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is test to make sure that this is going to work. So I'm going to slip the battery in here. Positive side up. Get that on the negative side of the battery holder. And I'm just going to touch this, and do you see it going on there? So when the alligator clip just touches that negative leg of the LED, it lights up and the circuit's complete. So now I know that the circuit works, and when I stitch this negative side of the circuit, I know that my light will go on. Circuit, I'm going to start by sewing into battery holder, just like we did on the other side. Pull it through. And back up. And I'm going to tie a knot. And there we go. So what I'm going to do right now is just cut off these little extra tail strands that are the extra length from the knot, because there's a chance they might get in the way and short the circuit. Now I'm going to connect to the loop of this LED by just, see the needle just poking up right there through the loop of the LED. And you can see my light is starting to go on now, because the circuit is completed. So while I'm doing that, I'm just going to pop the battery out so it doesn't stay on the whole time. So press down, pop the battery out, and let me keep sewing here so we can make sure this LED is stuck onto the paper. Now, on the back side here, this is the positive side of the circuit and this is the negative side of the circuit. If these two sides, positive and negative, if they touch, then your circuit will short. So make sure that when you tie these off that they're not touching at all. And I'll cut this here. so we have completed our first circuit. So let's pop the battery back in and light up our LED. There we go. So one thing that's really helpful to do, again, you don't need to, our circuit is fine and it's working, but to make sure that the connection between the battery holder and the conductive thread and then the conductive thread to the LED, to make sure all those connection points are solid, I'm just going to dab a little bit of glue on top of them, and that way everything will stick together nice and it'll be much harder to break the connection. What I can do is just tap my LED here and it should go on. So let's see. So this is the positive leg. So if I just put it down to the paper, look, it goes on. I'm just gonna stick it through that stitch right there. So it's connected there. And then what I'm going to do is make this like a little switch. So when it's flapped up like this, then it's like a button. So to help you see it, so there we go. When I press down and it flaps up, it's off. And when I press down, it's on. So in a way, it's a little switch. Okay, cool. So we've now completed our first circuit.